She confusses her room and sleeps with a stranger. Upon encountering him lying there, she is shocked and can't believe what she is seeing. A simple act changed their lives forever. Subscribe to the channel, leave a like and tell us in the comments from which city or country you are watching. The night was cold and a light drizzle left the streets wet, reflecting the vibrant lights of the city. The taxi glided along the asphalt, moving between the illuminated buildings, while Emily, leaning against the back seat, felt the weight of exhaustion on her shoulders. Her eyes burned from tiredness, and the muscles in her neck were tense after hours of holding the camera, adjusting lenses, and chasing the best angles. The coverage of the fashion event had been a success, but all she wanted now was a hot shower and a comfortable bed. "We're almost there, miss," the driver announced. Looking in the rearview mirror, she simply nodded, too weary to start a conversation. She held onto the strap of her backpack, where she kept her most valuable equipment, while next to it rested her small suitcase with clothes crumpled from the frantic pace of the past few days. When the taxi stopped in front of the imposing Royal Garden Hotel, she sighed with relief. The lobby was luxurious, with a huge chandelier hanging from the vaulted ceiling and a plush carpet muffling the footsteps of the guests. The reception was busy, and Emily had to wait a few minutes until a staff member approached. He seemed rushed, quickly checking the system before grabbing a key and handing it to her. "Here you go, ma'am, room 806. Emily took the key without paying much attention. The weight of fatigue made her thoughts sluggish, and the only thing on her mind was the promise of a few hours of rest. With effort, she dragged her suitcase to the elevator and pressed the button. For the 8th floor. Meanwhile, at another point in the city, Ethan walked through the revolving door of the hotel, letting out a long sigh. The night had been intense, celebrating the acquisition of a multi-million-dollar contract, and he still felt the effects of alcohol coursing through his blood. His suit jacket was thrown over his shoulder, his tie loose, and the first button of his shirt undone. He went straight to the elevator, leaning slightly against the mirrored wall as fatigue threatened to take over. His mind was still racing, but his body clamored for rest. When the door opened, he walked lazily down the hallway, unlocked the door to his room, and stepped in without even turning on the lights. Ethan let the suit jacket fall to the floor, kicked his shoes away, and unbuttoned his shirt with a trembling hand. With each piece of clothing he removed, the feeling of comfort increased. Finally, wearing only his underwear, he threw himself onto the spacious couch near the bed, closing his eyes before his head even touched the backrest. At the same moment, Emily entered room 806, pulling her suitcase inside and letting out a satisfied sigh. The space was sophisticated, with neutral tones and modern furniture. She placed her backpack on an armchair, took off her shoes, and went straight to the bathroom. The hot water from the shower relaxed her muscles, and for a few minutes, she allowed herself to forget the world outside. After drying off, she put on a cotton shirt and comfortable underwear, not bothering to wear shorts or pants. Exhausted, she turned off the lights in the room, lay down, and sank her head into the soft pillow. Sleep came quickly, dragging her into a deep stupor. But something was out of place. In the early hours of the morning, when the soft morning light began to seep into the room through the curtain's cracks, Emily stirred lazily, feeling her mind emerge from sleep. She stretched and slowly opened her eyes, observing the environment around her. That was when she realized the room looked different. Emily blinked a few times, confused. The bedside table was not the same as she remembered. The carpet, the arrangement of the furniture, even the bedspread, everything seemed more spacious, more luxurious than what she typically booked. A disturbing feeling crept up her spine, and she slowly sat up. With her bare feet on the carpet, she walked toward the living area of the room, feeling a tightness in her chest. That's when she saw there was a man there. He was lying on the couch, wearing only his underwear, with one arm over his eyes and a slow, rhythmic breathing. His chest rose and fell peacefully, revealing well-defined muscles and a discreet tattoo near his ribs. The shock made Emily's heart race. What was happening? Who was that man? She took a step back, feeling her cheeks burn as she processed the scene. He was incredibly attractive, but that wasn't the point. What was he doing there? Or rather, what was she doing there? Before she could process the confusion, the man stirred. Ethan opened his eyes slowly, sensing a presence nearby. His vision was still blurry from sleep, but then he saw her. A woman was standing before him, only in her underwear, with slightly messy hair and a look of panic on her face. The shock hit both of them at the same time. Ethan jumped up, grabbing a towel thrown over the armchair and covering the lower part of his body. His thoughts were jumbling, and his first reaction was to try to remember the previous night. He had drunk, yes, but did he bring someone to the room without remembering? "Who are you?" Emily was the first to speak, her voice slightly trembling. Ethan blinked a few times, still confused. "I should be the one asking that. This is my room." The silence that followed was thick with tension. Emily felt her stomach churn while Ethan tried to piece together the puzzle. And then, like a lightning bolt, understanding struck them both. Something was wrong, very wrong, and what started as a simple night of rest was about to turn into uncontrollable chaos. The silence in the room became unbearable. Emily's gaze oscillated between the semi-naked man in front of her and the furniture that, now, she realized did not belong to her. Her heart hammered in her chest, and her mind worked frantically to understand how she had ended up there. Ethan, for his part, was still assimilating the situation. His body was stiff, as if trying to defend itself from something he did not fully comprehend. He ran his hand through his disheveled hair, trying to organize his thoughts while holding the towel against his waist. "Can you tell me what is going on?" Emily's voice came out louder than she intended. "I'm the one who's asking," Ethan retorted, still bewildered. "This is my room." Emily felt a shiver run down her spine. How could this be? She had checked in normally. She had taken the key at the reception. She went up in the elevator, entered the room, and... "My God," she murmured, feeling her stomach sink. Ethan noticed the change in her expression and crossed his arms, watching her with suspicion. "Are you sure you entered the right room?" Emily's eyes widened. How could he ask that, of course? But deep down, a bothersome doubt began to surface. Without answering, she ran to her bag, took out the key, and looked at the number engraved on it. The blood ran cold. 806. She looked at the room door, and right there, visible on a small golden plate, was the number 804. Shock coursed through her body like lightning. "No, it can't be." Ethan noticed her reaction and leaned over slightly to see what she was looking at. When he saw the wrong number on the key, his expression changed. "You entered my room." Emily felt a wave of heat rush to her face. The embarrassment was so great that her legs went weak. "The clerk, he gave me the wrong key. I didn't realize." Ethan shook his head slowly, absorbing the situation. "So you spent the night here? With me? Without realizing?" The way he said that made Emily's face burn even more. "Not like that," she retorted, crossing her arms to try to hide her discomfort. "I slept in the bed, alone. I had no idea you were here." Ethan looked at the perfectly made bed and nodded, relieved. Okay, at least that. An awkward silence took over the room. Neither of them knew how to react. Emily felt a mix of shame, anger, and disbelief. How could something like this have happened? How could she have been so distracted? Ethan, on the other hand, was starting to find the situation absurd. He struggled to hold back a smile, but failed. "This is unbelievable," he murmured, running a hand over his face. Emily shot him an angry look. "Are you laughing?" Ethan raised his hands in a sign of defense. No. But let's face it, it's surreal. You just barged into my room, slept here, and only realized now. "I didn't barge in. The reception made a mistake." He raised an eyebrow. "And you didn't check the door before entering?" Emily opened her mouth to retort, but nothing came out. He was right. She should have checked. But at that moment, after an exhausting day, her mind simply assumed everything was right. She ran her hands over her face, frustrated. This shouldn't have happened. Damn it! Ethan observed her for a moment and noticed that behind the irritation there was a genuine expression of embarrassment. The laughter that had threatened to escape dissolved, and he took a deep breath. "Look, it was a mistake. It wasn't your fault, nor mine. Let's resolve this." She looked at him, hesitant. "Resolve how?" Ethan pointed to the phone on the side table. "We call the reception. They need to correct this." Emily nodded, still feeling her heart racing. Ethan picked up the phone and dialed the reception. After a few rings, a voice answered on the other end. "Royal Garden Hotel Reception, good morning. How can I help you?" "Good morning. This is Ethan from room 804. There was a mistake at check-in. It seems a guest received the wrong key and ended up sleeping in my room." The attendant fell silent for a moment. "Sir, could you repeat that?" Ethan looked at Emily and sighed. "The lady here beside me should be in room 806, but received the wrong key. Can you resolve this immediately?" The attendant's voice suddenly became nervous. "Sir, we apologize for the mistake. I will check this right now." Ethan hung up and crossed his arms. "Done. Now we just need to wait." Emily nodded, but still felt a strange discomfort in her chest. Something was wrong. How could a hotel of that level make such a basic mistake? She took her cell phone and opened the messages, but stopped as soon as she saw a notification from a gossip site. Her name was there. Emily, the renowned photographer, was seen entering the room of a mysterious man during the early morning at the Royal Garden Hotel. Is she living a secret romance? Shock coursed through her body like lightning. What happened? Ethan asked upon noticing her expression. She turned the phone to him, speechless. Ethan looked at the headline and frowned. This can't be serious. But it was. And unbeknownst to them, that innocent confusion was about to turn into a scandal that would change their lives forever. The phone rang at the exact moment Ethan was absorbing the impact of the headline. The sudden sound startled Emily, the cell phone still firmly between her trembling fingers. Ethan diverted his eyes from the sensational article and reached out to answer. Ethan speaking. The voice of the attendant sounded anxious on the other end of the line. "Sir, we want to express our deepest apologies for the check-in error. We have already checked the system and confirmed that Miss Emily should have received the key to room 806. We are ready to correct the situation immediately." Ethan cast a glance at Emily before responding. "I understand, but there's one more problem." He took the cell phone from her hand and read the headline aloud. The attendant was silent for a few seconds. "Sir, I can assure you that no one from the hotel staff would leak this information to the press." Ethan narrowed his eyes. "Then how do we explain this photo of her entering the room?" Emily leaned in, her eyes filled with concern. "Photo?" she whispered. Ethan scrolled down the cell phone screen and saw the image. A capture from a security camera showed Emily hurrying down the hall, opening the door to room 804. The unfavorable angle made it seem like she was being extremely cautious while entering, which could easily be misinterpreted. "This can't be a joke," Emily murmured, feeling her pulse quicken. Ethan spoke again with the reception. "I want to know who had access to these images. I demand you find out who leaked this and take immediate action." Sir, we will investigate. Investigate quickly, he cut in, his patience waning. He hung up and took a deep breath, rubbing his temples. This cannot be happening. Emily sank into the couch, stunned. I can't believe this is spreading. My name has never been involved in scandals. My work is everything to me. Ethan watched her, feeling a pang of empathy. He knew very well the impact that this type of exposure could cause. I understand what you're feeling, but we need to act fast. The longer we leave this unanswered, the bigger the story gets. Emily looked at him, a clear anguish in her eyes. What do I do? Ethan held the cell phone and ran his fingers over the screen. First, let's see how far this has gone. He opened social media and typed her name into the search. What he saw made him press his lips together tightly. The scandal was growing. Gossip pages were already speculating about a possible romance between the renowned photographer and a mysterious businessman. Some people defended Emily, saying it was absurd to judge someone without concrete evidence, but others were already accusing her of wanting to draw attention to her career. She felt a knot in her throat. This could ruin my credibility. Ethan clenched his jaw. Don't worry, I'll handle this. She lifted her gaze. How? He grabbed the cell phone and typed a message. I have some contacts in the press. I will clarify what really happened before the story escalates. Emily hesitated. You would really do this for me? Ethan looked her in the eye, firm. Not just for you. I also have a reputation to protect. And besides, I don't think it's right to let this story spread like this. She nodded, but still felt a weight on her chest. Before either of them could say anything else, the phone in the room rang again. Ethan answered immediately. Sir, we've managed to trace the source of the leak. He straightened up, and one of the reception staff accessed the security cameras overnight and, noticing the unusual activity, took screenshots. He forwarded the images to a contact who works for a gossip site. Ethan clenched his fists. I want that employee fired immediately, and I demand a statement from the hotel acknowledging the failure. The attendant stammered. Sir, we are taking the necessary measures. Ethan hung up without waiting for further explanations. He turned to Emily, his eyes filled with outrage. It was an employee. She ran her hand through her hair, exasperated. My God, this only proves that any slip-up can become a spectacle for others. Ethan took a deep breath. We need to get out of here before the press arrives. She stared at him. Do you think they will come here? It's only a matter of time. Emily felt a chill in her stomach. Where are we going? Ethan grabbed his shirt and quickly started putting it on. First, we'll go down and demand that the reception resolve this formally. Then we'll exit through the garage to avoid any commotion. She nodded, still trying to process everything. They both hurried to leave the room. When they reached the lobby, they could already feel eyes on them. The buzz among the staff was evident. The hotel manager greeted them with a tense expression. Gentlemen, I can assure you, we are taking measures to resolve this incident. Ethan crossed his arms. Resolve? We're already in the media. If you don't take public action to clarify that this was your mistake, I will take this further. Emily just watched the scene, feeling strange seeing Ethan assume such a firm posture for her. The manager cleared his throat. We will issue an official statement by the end of the day. Ethan didn't seem satisfied, but he nodded. Great. Now, if you'll excuse us, we need to leave discreetly. The manager accompanied them to the private garage, ensuring they had a quiet exit. When they got into the car, Emily let out a long sigh. I can't believe my life turned into this overnight. Ethan, in the driver's seat, cast her a sideways glance. We will deal with this. She sighed and closed her eyes for a moment. Little did she know that this situation was just the beginning of something much bigger. The silence inside the car was thick, laden with unspoken thoughts. Emily kept her eyes fixed on the landscape beyond the glass. while Ethan drove with firm hands on the wheel. The hotel was already behind them, but the feeling of being watched lingered. "Are you okay?" Ethan broke the silence. Emily let out a heavy sigh before answering. "No, but I guess that's the obvious answer, right?" He nodded slightly, keeping his eyes on the road. "I understand, but we'll handle this." She let out a humorless laugh. "Handle? Did you see what they are saying? They are calling me an opportunist, a woman trying to climb the career ladder using scandals." Ethan clenched his jaw. He was well aware of the weight of negative exposure. As clear as the truth was to them, what mattered to the media was the most sensational version of the story. "Don't worry about what they say. Time will prove that this was a mistake and nothing more." Emily turned her face to look at him. "Easy for you to say. You are an influential businessman. You've dealt with the spotlight before. I'm just a photographer who wants to be recognized for my work, not for some stupid gossip." Ethan took a deep breath, thinking about how he could help her. He didn't like the idea of seeing her suffer for something beyond her control. "Then let's control the narrative." She furrowed her brow. "What do you mean?" Ethan glanced quickly at her. Before returning his eyes to the road, "We will make an official statement. Something straightforward, explaining the situation without leaving room for more speculation. And who is going to want to hear the truth when the lie is much more interesting?" Ethan gripped the steering wheel a little tighter. "If the truth is told the right way, it can be stronger than any gossip." Emily fell silent, absorbing his words. "So you're really going to do this? You're going to put yourself out there for me?" He shot her a sidelong, firm look. "It's not just for you. I'm involved in this too. And I'm not the type to stand by while my name is used for cheap headlines." She averted her gaze, feeling a strange mix of gratitude and discomfort. She wasn't used to someone willing to defend her like that. The car slowed down as Ethan turned onto a quieter street, away from the hustle of downtown. "Where are we going?" Emily asked. "To a more secluded cafe. We need to talk without the risk of being approached by reporters." She nodded, realizing that she really needed a moment to breathe before deciding her next step. The cafe was small and cozy, with soft lighting and an inviting aroma of freshly ground beans. They chose a discreet table at the back of the establishment, away from curious eyes. Ethan ordered a double espresso, while Emily opted for a cappuccino. She stirred the spoon distractedly in her cup when she finally broke the silence. "I don't know how I'm going to deal with this." Ethan rested his elbows on the table and leaned slightly forward. "You've been through difficult situations before, right?" She raised her eyes to him, surprised by the question. "Yes, of course, but nothing like this." He nodded. "The difference is that now you're not alone." Emily felt something within her waver. She wasn't used to relying on anyone. She had always been independent, fighting for every achievement. But there was something in the way Ethan said that sounded sincere, as if he really wanted to help her. She sighed and leaned back in her chair. "Okay, let's pretend I accept this idea of a statement. How would it go?" Ethan smiled slightly, pleased to see her more open to the idea. "Something simple, no drama, no beating around the bush. We just explain that there was a mistake at check-in, that you received the wrong key and ended up sleeping in the wrong room." She bit her lower lip. "And what if no one believes it?" Ethan shrugged. "We can't control what people choose to believe, but we can do our part and make it clear what really happened." Emily fell silent for a moment, then let out a weak laugh. "You talk as if you've done this before." Ethan took a sip of his coffee before answering. "I've dealt with image crises before. In the business world, any slip-up can become a disaster." She tilted her head. "And has your reputation ever been tarnished by some gossip?" He held her gaze for a moment before answering. "A few times, but I learned not to let that define me." Emily felt curious about his story, but decided not to press. And when are we going to make this statement? Ethan took out his phone. I'll contact a reliable journalist and schedule a short interview. Something straightforward and with no room for speculation. She took a deep breath. Okay. Ethan smiled lightly. Great decision. But as he typed the message on his phone, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that things were far from resolved. Something told her this was only the beginning of a much bigger whirlwind. Ethan's phone vibrated on the table, momentarily interrupting the tense silence. He picked up the device, read the response he had just received, and raised his eyes to Emily. I managed to do it. We have an interview scheduled for this afternoon with a reliable journalist. She took a deep breath, trying to digest the information. And where will it be? In a private studio. No press conference, no unnecessary exposure. Just the two of us clarifying everything. Emily nodded slowly, but her gaze still carried hesitation. Ethan, what if this makes things worse? He leaned slightly in her direction, keeping his gaze firm. It will get worse if we stay silent. The media loves a mystery. If we leave this story unexplained, they will fill in the gaps with anything that generates more engagement. She knew he was right. But that didn't make the situation any less daunting. All right, she finally agreed, biting her lower lip. Let's get this over with. Ethan gave a slight smile. That's the right attitude. But deep down, both of them knew that not everything depended solely on the truth. The studio room was minimalist, with dark walls and soft lighting. A small black leather sofa was positioned in front of the cameras, where Emily and Ethan would sit for the interview. The journalist, an experienced man with a neutral expression, waited as the crew adjusted the final audio and video details. Emily felt her hands sweating, and Ethan noticed. He leaned slightly in her direction and whispered, "Breathe, it'll be fine." She nodded, but she was not entirely convinced. The journalist sat down in an armchair in front of them, holding a tablet with some notes. "Shall we start?" he asked politely. Ethan looked at Emily, waiting for her nod of agreement. She swallowed hard and nodded. The camera was turned on. "Good afternoon," the journalist began. "I am here today with Ethan and Emily, who have agreed to clarify a recent incident that gained media attention. Let's get straight to the point. What really happened that night at the hotel?" Ethan adjusted himself in his seat and spoke first. It was an error at check-in. The reception handed Emily the wrong room key. When she entered, she believed it was her room, and since she was very tired, she didn't notice the mix-up. The journalist turned to Emily. "So you only realized the mistake the following morning?" She nodded. "Yes, I was exhausted after a long event and honestly didn't even realize. I only noticed something was wrong when I woke up and saw Ethan on the sofa." "And what was your reaction when you realized the situation?" Ethan chuckled lightly. "At first it was a shock. None of us immediately understood what had happened. But as soon as we called reception, the mistake was confirmed." The journalist slid his fingers across the tablet. "However, some security camera footage was leaked, leading to speculation. Do you think this was intentional?" Ethan became serious. "We can't say for sure, but it was an invasion of privacy and an irresponsible use of information that should have been restricted to the hotel." Emily added, "What bothers me the most is how some people turn this into a sensationalist narrative. My work has always been my priority, and I don't want to be remembered for a false scandal." The journalist asked one last question. "So to clarify once and for all, do you have or have you had any romantic involvement?" Emily widened her eyes for a moment. Ethan, on the other hand, remained impassive. "No," he replied firmly. "It was just a confusion," Emily confirmed with a nod, but something inside her stirred. There was something about the way Ethan denied it that made her feel a strange pang, as if a part of her expected a different answer. The journalist smiled politely. "Thank you for your transparency. I hope this helps clarify the situation." The interview ended, and the cameras were turned off. Emily released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "It was less bad than I expected," she admitted. Ethan smiled slightly. "I told you it would be fine." But before they could completely relax, Ethan's phone vibrated. He picked up the device and frowned upon seeing the contact's name. "It's my assistant, 1 minute." He stepped away a bit to take the call, while Emily tried to calm her thoughts. But moments later, Ethan returned with a closed expression. We have a problem." Emily's heart raced. "What happened?" He turned the phone in his hand, thoughtful. "It seems someone leaked a new video." Emily felt her stomach turn. "What video?" Ethan took a deep breath before responding. "One where you are seen leaving the hotel through the garage with me." The blood drained from Emily's face. "What?" Ethan ran his hand through his hair, visibly frustrated. "They are saying that this was our attempt to escape from reporters, as if we had something to hide." She felt a lump in her throat. "This can't be happening." Ethan looked at her, his expression determined. "We need to find out who is behind this." Emily nodded, feeling a shiver run down her spine. "But what if more things are being prepared against us?" Ethan held her gaze. "Then we will prepare as well." She swallowed hard. For the first time, she realized that this was far from over. And worse, she felt that there was something much bigger behind the scenes, manipulating everything for a purpose she still couldn't see. The weight of that new revelation fell on Emily like an unexpected blow. Until then, she believed that with the interview, she could finally breathe a sigh of relief. But the release of that new video made it clear that someone was determined to fuel the controversy. She ran her hand over her face, feeling the fatigue accumulate. "What are we going to do now?" Ethan maintained a serious expression. He had dealt with crises before, but this one felt different. "First, we need to know who's behind this." Emily crossed her arms, restless. "Do you think it's still someone from the hotel?" He pressed his lips together, thoughtful. "It's a possibility. But this systematic release, it seems like something bigger. Someone wants to turn this into a spectacle." She frowned, but who would be interested in doing that? Ethan stared into space for a few moments before pulling out his phone and quickly dialing a number. "I'll ask my assistant to investigate. If there's someone behind the scenes pulling the strings, we need to find out who it is." He walked a few steps to take the call, leaving Emily alone with her thoughts. Her fingers drummed on the table as her heart raced. The feeling of being at the center of a storm left her uncomfortable. The worst part was that the more she tried to step away, the more she seemed to be pulled into the hurricane. She lifted her gaze to Ethan, who was now gesturing as he spoke on the phone, clearly dissatisfied with something he was hearing. He hung up and returned to the table, his jaw clenched. "This isn't good." "What is it now?" Emily asked, feeling her stomach churn. Ethan pulled up a chair and sat closer to her. "My assistant said there are rumors circulating among journalists that more content about us might leak. Someone is feeding this story with new information all the time." Emily's eyes widened. "What?" Ethan nodded, his fingers intertwined on the table. "We don't know exactly what will be released. It could just be speculation, or there may be more images, perhaps distorted conversations." Emily felt a chill run down her spine. "This is getting out of control." Ethan held her gaze. "Yes, and we need to act fast." She swallowed hard. "How?" Ethan leaned back in his chair, thoughtful. "We have two options. We either ignore it and let time wear down the story, or," Emily pressed. He narrowed his eyes. or we turn the tables." She frowned. "What do you mean?" Ethan rested his elbows on the table and leaned slightly toward her. "If there's someone trying to harm us, that person expects us to back down, to feel cornered. But what if we do the opposite?" Emily blinked a few times. "Opposite?" Ethan nodded. "Instead of denying or trying to escape the exposure, we can use this to our advantage." She raised an eyebrow. "You're suggesting that we feed the rumor?" Ethan smirked. "Not exactly, but we can redirect the narrative. Show that we're in control of the situation." Emily crossed her arms, intrigued. "And how would we do that?" Ethan relaxed a bit more in his chair, as if he had already calculated the next steps. "We start by appearing together in public, unafraid. If they see us trying to hide, it only increases speculation. If we act naturally, as if there's nothing to hide, the gossip loses strength." She hesitated. "You want me to pretend that nothing is happening?" Ethan gave a half smile. "I want us to show that we are not hostages of this situation." Emily took a deep breath. The idea seemed bold, but it made sense. "Do you really think this can work?" "Yes, but we need to be aligned. Any hesitation can be interpreted in the worst possible way." She bit her lower lip, pondering. "And what exactly do you suggest?" Ethan took out his phone and opened his agenda. "Tonight, there's a charity event organized by one of my companies. Several important names from the media and business will be there. If we attend together, we show that we have nothing to hide." Emily blinked a few times. "You want me to go to a gala event in the middle of this mess?" Ethan smiled slightly. "If there's a place where we can turn this narrative around, it's there." She sighed. "And what if it gets worse?" He tilted his head, his eyes filled with confidence. "Do you trust me?" Emily opened her mouth to respond, but hesitated. She didn't know if she trusted him, not because she doubted Ethan's intelligence, but because she had never allowed anyone to guide her in such a complicated situation. But at that moment, she saw no other way out. "All right," she finally said. "Let's go to this event." Ethan smiled. "Great, but there's one detail." She frowned. "What?" He stood up from the table, grabbing the car keys. "You're going to need a dress that befits the occasion." Emily's eyes widened. "You want me to go shopping now?" Ethan shrugged. "If we're going to do this, let's do it right." She sighed, massaging her temples. "This is going to be a disaster." Ethan chuckled lightly. "Or it could be the start of something unexpected." Emily stared at him, trying to decipher if he was talking only about the strategy or something more. But before she could respond, he was already holding the cafe door, waiting for her. She took a deep breath, stood up, and walked toward him. Unknowingly, that would be the night that changed everything. Emily's reflection in the dressing room mirror made her hold her breath. The long, black silk dress embraced her curves in a way that left her bewildered. The fabric glided smoothly over her body, and the elegant neckline subtly and sophisticatedly exposed her shoulders. She ran her hands along the side of the garment, feeling her heart race. She looked beautiful, but she was also completely out of her comfort zone. "So?" Ethan's voice came from outside. She hesitated for a moment before pulling back the curtain and stepping out. Ethan, who was leaning against the wall, fiddling with his phone, lifted his gaze and froze. His eyes swept over Emily from head to toe, and for a moment his expression lost its usual composure. "Wow." She crossed her arms, unsure how to react to that intense gaze. "Is that a good wow or a terrible wow?" Ethan gave a half smile, tilting his head to the side. "Definitely a good wow." Emily felt her cheeks heat up and looked away. "Well, I hope this plan works." Ethan stepped away from the wall and moved a little closer. It will work. She let out a sigh. If this goes wrong, I will regret it for the rest of my life. Ethan smiled, leaning slightly in her direction. If it goes wrong, we'll figure it out. Emily stared at him for a moment, realizing how secure she felt by his side. It frightened her a little. Before she could say anything, Ethan picked up his phone. The driver is already waiting for us. Ready? She took a deep breath and nodded. Let's get this over with. The entrance to the event was crowded with photographers, journalists, and impeccably dressed guests. Emily felt a chill run down her spine when she saw the cameras pointed at the main entrance. She was about to take a step directly into the center of the spotlight. Inside the car, Ethan observed her expression and noticed her hesitation. "Hey," she turned her face towards him. "Trust me," he repeated, this time in a softer tone. Emily swallowed hard and nodded. Ethan opened the car door and stepped out first. As soon as he appeared, the flashes went off in full force. He took a few steps and then turned, extending his hand to Emily. She hesitated for a brief second before taking his hand and getting out of the car. It was as if time had stopped. The flashes lit up her face, whispers grew around them, and all eyes turned completely towards them. Ethan maintained a calm expression and a firm posture. His thumb lightly brushed Emily's hand in a subtle gesture, as if to reassure her. She took a deep breath and lifted her chin. If this was the plan, then she needed to trust him. Together, they walked down the red carpet. Reporters were trying to ask questions. "Ethan, are you two making your relationship public? Emily, how are you dealing with the fallout from the scandal? Did you spend the night together at the hotel or not?" Emily felt her chest tighten with those invasive questions, but she kept a firm expression. Ethan, on the other hand, smiled calmly and responded calculatedly, "We are just here to honor an important event. Good night, everyone." Without leaving room for more speculation, he led her into the hall. The event hall was stunning, decorated with luxurious chandeliers and impeccable floral arrangements. The soft sound of the piano in the background mixed with the buzz of conversation and the clinking of champagne glasses. Emily felt her body relax a bit as soon as she entered. "Did it work?" she asked, looking at Ethan. He gave a slight smile. "It worked." "How can you be so sure?" Ethan made a slight nod in the direction of the people around. "Because now they aren't looking at us like a scandal. They're looking at us like a mystery." She frowned. "And is that good? Better than being treated as targets." Emily let out a sigh. "I hope you're right." Ethan grabbed 2 champagne glasses and handed one to her. "Let's enjoy the night." Emily took the glass and smiled slightly. "I still can't believe I agreed to do this." Ethan raised his glass in a toast. Then, toast to boldness. She laughed and clinked her glass against his before taking a sip of her drink. For a moment, everything seemed calm, but that's when everything fell apart. A notification on Emily's phone made her hand tremble. She unlocked the device and felt the world spin. A new article had just been published. Leak reveals new details about the night of Emily and Ethan at the hotel. Definitive proof that they hid the truth. Her stomach churned. "Ethan." Her voice came out weak. He noticed the change in her expression and immediately grabbed the phone. Upon reading the headline, his eyes narrowed. He clicked on the article, and the content made both of their blood run cold. Someone had obtained audio from a hotel employee, where he insinuated that Emily knew she was in the wrong room and that she had stayed there willingly. The media was twisting everything again. Ethan took a deep breath, trying to contain his anger. This was set up. Emily felt her hands sweating. This is going too far. Ethan looked around, analyzing the faces in the hall. "We need to find out who is behind this, and quickly." Emily swallowed hard. "And if we don't manage to?" He turned to her, his expression intense. "Then we will fight until the end." She stared at him, feeling a mix of fear and adrenaline. She didn't know if she was ready for this anymore, but for the first time, she realized she didn't want to face it alone. The hall around Emily seemed to spin, the buzz of voices, the clinking of glasses, the soft music of the piano. Everything became a distant noise as she kept her eyes glued to the screen of her phone. The words in the article shimmered as if they were screaming at her. Emily Martins knew she was in the wrong room and spent the night with Ethan of her own accord. It was a blatant lie. Her fingers gripped the phone tightly, her heart racing. "This can't be happening," she murmured, feeling a lump in her throat. Ethan was still reading the article, his expression becoming increasingly strained. "They are manipulating the facts," he said, clenching his jaw. "They are turning this into something dirty." Emily raised her eyes to him, feeling the panic intensify. "This destroys my reputation. No one will want to work with a photographer who gets involved in scandals." Ethan looked around, making sure no one was paying attention to them. "We need to get out of here, now!" He firmly but gently held her arm and quickly guided her out of the hall. As soon as they passed through the double doors, the cold night breeze hit them. Emily took a deep breath, trying to control the whirlwind of emotions inside her. Ethan turned to her, his face serious. "This was planned." "Of course it was," Emily exclaimed, her voice coming out louder than she intended. "But by whom?" Ethan pulled out his phone and dialed a number. "I'll find out now." As he spoke with someone, Emily tried to organize her thoughts. But how could she? Her image was being destroyed before her eyes, and she had no way to stop it. The call was brief. Ethan hung up and ran his hand through his hair, visibly tense. "My advisor confirmed. The leaked audio came from someone inside the hotel." Emily's eyes widened. "The same employee as before?" "No, someone higher up." Her heart raced. "What does that mean?" Ethan took a deep breath. "It means someone with influence inside the hotel is pulling the strings." A shiver ran down Emily's spine. "But why?" Ethan looked around as if trying to piece together an invisible puzzle. "Either they want to publicly destroy us, or they want to force us to react." She furrowed her brow. "Forced to react?" "Yes, make us act on impulse." Emily felt a knot in her stomach. "And what if they succeed?" Ethan crossed his arms, his gaze sharp. "They won't." She wanted to believe that, but how could she? She was feeling more and more cornered. Ethan seemed to notice her hesitation and softened his expression. "Hey, I promised that I wouldn't let you go through this alone." Emily blinked a few times, feeling a tightness in her chest. She wasn't used to someone caring for her like that. "But what if it's too late?" Ethan shook his head. "It's not, but we need to act wisely." She took a deep breath, trying to gather her strength. "What do you suggest?" He thought for a moment before answering. "We need to counterattack." Emily's eyes widened. "Counterattack?" Ethan nodded. "If someone is using information against us, then let's find something against that person." She hesitated. "You want to retaliate with the same dirty game?" He rubbed his chin, pondering. "I'm not saying we'll make up lies, but there's something behind this, and I want to find out what it is." Emily bit her lower lip. "How will we do that?" Ethan grabbed his phone. "I have a contact who can get inside information from the hotel. Let's find out who is manipulating this story." She crossed her arms, still uncertain. "And what if we find nothing?" Ethan looked her in the eye. "Then we keep fighting." Emily felt a chill run down her spine. "Ethan, and what if this person is dangerous?" He held her gaze. "Then we need to stay one step ahead." The silence between them was thick. Emily knew she was crossing a line she had never crossed before, but at that moment she was certain of one thing: she would not back down. The silence of the dawn was interrupted only by the distant noise of cars crossing the avenue. At the top of the luxurious building where Ethan lived, Emily leaned on the balcony, looking at the illuminated city below. The cold wind messed up her hair, but she didn't move. Inside the apartment, Ethan was speaking on the phone, his voice firm but controlled. "I need this information as quickly as possible. Find out who within the hotel has privileged access to the cameras and the guest records. This was set up, and I want to know who is behind it." He heard the response from the other side of the line and nodded. "All right, let me know as soon as you find out anything." Hanging up the call, Ethan put his phone in his pocket and turned around, finding Emily still standing on the balcony, motionless. "Are you okay?" he asked, stepping closer. She let out a dry laugh, but without humor. That question is starting to get repetitive. Ethan leaned against the railing beside her, his eyes fixed on the city. "Do you want me to stop asking?" She turned her face to him and studied him for a moment. "No, but I doubt my answer will change." Ethan didn't respond immediately. He just looked at her, feeling that there was something deeper going on inside her, beyond fear and anger at the situation. "You know," Emily continued, crossing her arms, "I've spent my whole life trying to be recognized for my talent. I worked hard to secure every space, every client. I never needed anyone to help me." She diverted her gaze to the city, lights. "And now, all people see is a scandal." Ethan watched her closely. "Your work speaks louder than that." She laughed, but still without humor. "Not in the media world. Here what sells is sensationalism, and I've become a product for them." Ethan sighed. "I know what that is. I went through something similar years ago when an important negotiation leaked before it was time. My name was dragged through the mud, accused of things I hadn't even done." Emily turned her face to him, surprised. "And how did you get out of that?" He looked at her. "I did exactly what we're doing now. I found out who was behind it." She held his gaze, absorbing his words. "And did you succeed?" Ethan nodded. "Yes, but it cost me a lot." "How so?" Ethan averted his eyes to the horizon, the features of his face becoming more tense. "I lost a partner, a friend, or at least someone I thought was." Emily felt a tightness in her chest as she noticed the shadow in his gaze. "Do you think it could be someone close to you this time?" Ethan took a deep breath. "I don't rule out that possibility, but I'm almost certain that I'm not the target." Emily frowned. "Then who?" He turned his face to her, his expression laden with meaning. "You." Her heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" Ethan rested his hands on the balcony. "From the beginning, all of this has been directed at you. The leak of the images, the distortions of the information. If it were just about me, they would use other stories. But every detail of this narrative is focused on tarnishing your reputation." She stood still for a moment, absorbing that possibility. "But why?" Ethan tilted his head slightly as if he already had his suspicion. "Is there someone who would benefit from your downfall?" Emily blinked a few times, processing the question. "I don't know." "Think carefully. Any competitors? Someone who's tried to bring you down in the past?" She closed her eyes, for a moment, mentally revisiting her path. Then an uncomfortable memory emerged. Her heart raced. "It could be a coincidence, but there is someone who might have motives to harm me." Ethan narrowed his eyes. "Who?" Emily licked her lips before responding. "Julia." Ethan furrowed his brow. "Who is Julia?" Emily looked down at the ground. "A former co-worker. When I started to gain ground in event photography, she didn't like it. She always thought I was stealing opportunities that should have been hers." Ethan crossed his arms. "Has she done anything against you before?" Emily hesitated. Not directly, but there were rumors that she spread gossip about me to other professionals. Ethan thought for a moment. And does she have connections? In the hotel. Emily remained silent for several seconds, then her eyes widened. Yes, one of the organizers of the fashion event I covered is her friend. Ethan clenched his jaw. That makes more sense now. Emily felt a mix of indignation and anger. Do you think she is involved in this? Ethan tilted his head. We don't have proof yet, but if she has motives and contacts, we can't ignore that possibility. She took a deep breath, trying to control the wave of emotions that engulfed her. If it is her, what will we do? Ethan looked at her, his expression filled with determination. We uncover the truth. Emily felt a chill down her spine. And if we don't like what we find? He held her gaze. Then we deal with it together. She swallowed hard. For the first time, she felt that the truth could be scarier than any gossip. But there was no turning back now. The night advanced, but Emily couldn't rest. Lying on the enormous sofa in Ethan's apartment, she kept her eyes fixed on the ceiling while her mind spun out of control. Julia? Could it really be her? Everything seemed to make sense. The veiled hostility, the malicious rumors from the past, the connections to the event. But at the same time, Emily refused to believe that anyone could be capable of destroying her reputation in that way. The sound of footsteps echoed through the room. Ethan approached, holding 2 glasses filled with ice and an amber liquid. I brought this for you. She sat up a bit, taking the glass without much ceremony. What is it? Ethan sat down next to her and took a sip before answering. Whiskey. Trust me, you need it. Emily let out a weak laugh. I don't know if alcohol will solve my problems. Ethan watched her, his gaze intense. It won't, but it can help you process them. She sighed and took a small sip, feeling the warmth of the drink go down her throat. Do you think I'm overreacting? Ethan shook his head. No, I think you're dealing with a bomb and trying to hold it all in by yourself for too long. Emily looked away at the glass, swirling the liquid inside. I just never imagined I would go through something like this. Ethan studied her expression for a moment before speaking. I know how it is, but believe me, the truth always finds a way to come out. Emily took a deep breath. I hope so. Ethan's phone vibrated on the coffee table. He quickly grabbed the device, analyzing the screen with a serious look. My contact got something. Emily straightened up on the sofa. And then? Ethan swiped his finger over the screen and opened an email. His eyes skimmed the content, and as he read, his expression became graver. Damn, he murmured. Emily felt a shiver. What was that? He turned the phone to her, showing what was on the screen, an exchange of emails between a hotel employee and Julia. The emails were straightforward. Julia questioned the employee about Emily's presence at the hotel and asked for any relevant information about her stay. In response, the employee stated that Emily was in the wrong room, and Julia replied with an enigmatic, "This could be useful." Emily felt her stomach sink. It can't be. Ethan turned the phone back to himself, analyzing the details. This proves she was involved in the leak. Emily brought one hand to her face, trying to process the discovery. But why? Why would she do this to me? Ethan clenched his jaw. 'Cause for some people, the success of others is a threat. She bit her lip, feeling a mix of anger and betrayal. What are we going to do now? Ethan took a deep breath, leaning forward. We need to expose this, but the right way. Emily blinked a few times. How? Ethan looked at her, his eyes filled with determination. We will show the world who is really manipulating this story. She felt a chill down her spine. You want to publish these emails? Ethan nodded. Yes, but we can't do it impulsively. We need a strategy. Emily hesitated for a moment before agreeing. So what's the plan? Ethan grabbed his phone and started typing. I'll send this to a journalist I trust, someone who won't twist the facts. Emily squeezed the glass between her fingers. If we do this, there's no turning back. Ethan raised his eyes to hers. Do you want justice, or do you want to run away? She held his gaze, feeling her heart race. The answer was already within her. I want justice. Ethan smiled slightly. Then let's give Julia what she deserves. Emily took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the decision, but for the first time since it all began, she felt like she was in control again. The clock struck nearly 3 a.m. when Ethan received the message they had both been waiting for. The article will be published at dawn. Emily will have nowhere to run. Emily read the words on Ethan's cell phone and felt a mix of relief and anxiety. All night, the emails exchanged between Julia and the hotel staff had been analyzed and verified by Ethan's trusted journalist. Now, the truth would finally surface. She leaned back on the couch and let out a long sigh. Tomorrow, everything changes. Ethan watched her attentively. Are you ready for that? She turned her face to him and for the first time in days felt she could breathe. Yes. The next morning, the headline exploded like a bomb. The truth about the hotel scandal leaked. Emails prove that Emily was the victim of a cruel setup. The article spread rapidly. The journalist revealed screenshots of the messages exchanged between Julia and the hotel staff, proving that Emily had never planned to be in that room, and that it was all just manipulation to destroy her reputation. Social media was filled with outraged comments. What an outrage! They tried to ruin her career out of pure envy. And now, Julia, will you invent more lies or admit you're a scoundrel? Ethan and Emily were right all along. What else is the media distorting? The turnaround was instantaneous. Those who had attacked Emily were now apologizing. Gossip sites began to remove old articles or rewrite them with the new developments. Her name was no longer associated with a scandal, but rather as an example of someone who was unjustly defamed. And, as expected, Julia disappeared from social media. Emily was sitting on Ethan's apartment bed, reading the comments on her cell phone, when she felt her eyes fill with tears. It's over, she whispered, as if she needed to say it out loud to believe it. Ethan, who was observing everything standing by the window, turned to her. Yes, it's over. She looked at him, feeling a whirlwind of emotions. If you hadn't helped me, I don't know what would have happened to me. Ethan approached, slowly, and sat beside her on the bed. I told you wouldn't have to face this alone. Emily felt her heart race. Throughout all this chaos, she tried to convince herself that everything between them was just a partnership forced by circumstances. But in that moment, looking at Ethan so close, she realized that something had changed. He was also looking at her differently. And now? She asked, her voice lower. Ethan ran his hand through his hair, thoughtful. Now we move on. You have your career and I have my business. She nodded slowly. Yeah, I guess so. But there was something in the way he said that which sounded strange, as if he was trying to convince her, or himself. The silence stretched, until Ethan sighed and said what he was really thinking, or, we can admit that something happened between us. Emily's heart skipped a beat. What? Ethan looked directly into her eyes. It wasn't just the scandal. It wasn't just the exposure. You know that as much as I do. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out, because he was right. She felt something grow between them from the moment she woke up in that wrong room. At first, it was shock, then irritation, then complicity. And now, something she still couldn't name, but that burned inside her. Ethan, Her voice came out hesitant, but he just smiled sideways. I know. You never planned any of this. Neither did I. But sometimes the best things happen without any planning. She watched him for a moment, trying to decide whether to give in to what she felt or run away before it was too late. And then Ethan made his choice for her. He leaned in and kissed her. It was a slow, firm kiss, without hesitation, as if he was showing her that everything they had lived up to that point made sense. Emily felt the world spinning around her, and for the first time in a long time, she didn't want to fight against what she felt. When they separated, Ethan kept his forehead pressed against hers. Does that answer your question? She laughed softly, still breathless. It does. Ethan smiled. Great, because I don't plan on letting you go anytime soon. Emily smiled back. Then we have a new problem. He raised an eyebrow. What? She ran her fingers along his face, feeling his light stubble under her fingertips. What if this is another scandal? Ethan shrugged. Then let it be, but this time it's going to be a real scandal. Emily laughed and kissed him again, and this time there were no cameras, headlines, or conspiracies, just the two of them. And so, from a mistake at check-in to an unexpected scandal, Emily and Ethan discovered that sometimes destiny acts in unpredictable ways, and that love can be born even in the midst of chaos. Now we want to know, what would you do in Emily's place? Would you have faced everything or run away from the exposure?